Hi everybody, this is Ashley with Ashley Says So. If you want to get your Says So merch, go ahead and click on the link in the description. Also, if you would like to send me gifts off of my Amazon wish list, that link is also in the description. Now, I haven't said anything like this in a long time, but I'm telling y'all right now, this video right here is nothing to play with. I know this guy, Spade Cooley, looks all lame and kind of wonky, but baby, he's the real deal. I'm talking about some stuff that's gonna make you quiver in your boots. So, you know, some of y'all might not want to proceed further, but if you are brave enough, if you are bold enough, and if you take your feelings out of the equation, put your doggone helmets on, because after this disclaimer, we're gonna tell that little doggone bio and we're gonna get to the scandal, child. The scandal. Let's get to it. Donnell Clyde Cooley, aka Spade Cooley, was born on December the 17th, 1910 in Grand, Oklahoma, on a little dirt floor in a house that was pretty much falling apart. His mother's name was Emma Peoria Cooley, and his father's name was John Wesley Cooley, and both of his parents were half Native American. They were also very heavy drinkers, and they both were said to be crazier than a Betsy bug. Allegedly, his mother used to sit in front of their house every day just ranting and raving at anybody that would walk by, and his father, who would be inside of the house, would go into a rage and would holler out, "Hush up that racket out there, woman, if I end up slapping you to sleep." And then after that, he would stump off to the nearest dice game or card game to gamble away any money the family had. With little Spade watching and learning this dysfunction, it was not surprising when later on locals told stories about how 6-year-old Spade would walk right up to them, take a swig out of their liquor bottle, and then light up a smoke and pretty much curse out anybody who would have anything to say about it. There was probably only one thing that Spade was learning that was good, and that was how to fiddle. See, when Spade's father John wasn't gambling and drinking, he was always fiddling to entertain others, and Spade picked up on it, and so soon little Spade became one of the best fiddlers in town. On top of fiddling, little Spade also picked up on the gambling habit that his father had. But the difference between Spade and his father is that Spade was good at gambling. That's how he got his nickname Spade. So they lived a very destitute life, and they began to live like nomads, traveling place to place. One place that they settled for a long period of time, though, was in Modesto, California. Spade, who was around 14 to 15 years old at this time, I'm sure looked at life like it was very bleak. However, when he got to Modesto, there was one thing that brightened his day, and that is when he met a young Indian girl by the name of Annie. Spade and Annie fell in love at first sight, and before either of them reached the age of 16 years old, they were already married and had already given birth to their only child, a son named John. And now that Spade had his own little family, he needed to be able to provide. So he started fiddling a lot more, but on top of that, he also started boxing, and on top of that, he also started sharecropping. Spade, his wife, and his child were getting along fine, but he wanted more in life. And so one day he rushed home and he told his wife that he was going to set off to Hollywood to make that dream come true. And Spade is not one of those people who went to Hollywood and made it right off the bat. No, he struggled for a few years. He ended up having to do the exact same thing that he did back home in Modesto, play his fiddle on the side of the street, at the movie houses, at saloons, cafes, wherever he could. But it was around 1933 or 1934 that Spade decided that if nobody would give him a chance, he would just break down the door and take his chance. And so he took all of the money that he had and he bought himself a very sharp cowboy outfit. He had the shirt with the shimmery tassels, the fine brown pants, the nice expensive boots. Made sure he had his hat, the belt with the big buckle, the whole nine. And what he was trying to do was dress the part. In fact, he was trying to dress the part of his favorite actor, Gene Autry. And that is who Spade had made up his mind he was going to get his chance from. And he decided that he was going to do this by sneaking into the studio to catch Gene Autry alone. So he arrives at the studio when everybody's done shooting for the day, and he sees Gene Autry's assistant leave. And as Gene Autry's assistant is leaving, Spade sneaks through the side door. He rushes over to Gene Autry's dressing room and he just bursts right in, fully expecting to be thrown right out. But instead, something amazing happens. Gene Autry glances over at Spade and blurts out, "Hey, what's up, Lenny? What you been up to?" Spade is frozen in place and he's looking around like, what is wrong with this man? Who is Lenny? And Gene is just looking at Spade, waiting for an answer. And it is while he is looking that he realizes, oh, wait, hold on. You're not Lenny? who are you? And that's when Spade takes the chance to introduce himself, and he's all like, yellow, I'm Spade Cooley, the next big country star. And Gene Autry is like, well, it's nice to meet you, Mr. Spade Cooley. What I want you to do is turn around and walk out of this dressing room and walk down the hallway until you see a door that says Leonard Sly. Once you get there, I want you to knock on that door. So Spade does what he's told, and he goes and knocks on the door, but when the door is open, there is a mirror standing there. And Spade starts thinking, this guy must have sent me down here to play a joke on me. Clearly, he thinks I'm a jackass. But then he notices that his reflection in the mirror is not emulating his moves. In fact, his reflection is just standing there looking at him like this. And Spade also notices that there is no mirror, and this is not his reflection. And now it's Spade's turn to have his mouth drop. And what he realizes is that this must be Leonard Sly, and that they look almost exactly alike. Leonard and Spade both end up breaking out in laughter. They introduce themselves to each other, and they're just kind of walking around each other, and they cannot believe it. They look so much alike. They're the same height. Their eyes are exactly the same. They have the same hairstyle. Their skin color is pretty much the same. It is uncanny. And the reason that I'm explaining this moment in so much detail is because it was this moment right here that helped Spade break into show business. This moment is what gave him a chance, because the guy, Leonard Sly, was an upcoming star, and within a few months, his name would be changed to Roy Rogers. So yes, this is the Roy Rogers, and Spade Cooley looked exactly like him. So when Roy Rogers blew up, it was pretty much a given that Spade Cooley was going to do the same thing. And while Roy Rogers basically became a movie star, and he also sang as well, Spade blew up more on the actual music side. He became a leader of big band, and he was so good at it that eventually he did appear in a couple of films, and he also got his own TV show. Spade Cooley became one of the most beloved stars in the world, but if people knew what was going on behind the scenes, things would have been massively different. And when they found out just what was going on behind the scenes, it turned out to be a scandalous thing, child. Come on, let's get to it. So pretty much Spade Cooley's whole career, there were two sides of this man. Most people only knew the sweet, good-natured Spade, but there was another side that he kept hidden. Rumor has it that once he did get a little fame, he ended up moving his wife Annie and his son John to Hollywood with him, and his wife Annie noticed right away that the Spade that she encountered was not the Spade that she had married in Modesto. The first thing that she noticed was that Spade was now much lighter than he used to be in Modesto. So she asked him, like, what's going on with your skin? Why is your skin looking more pale? And Spade admitted to her that he'd been seeing a doctor and he was having his skin lightened. Well, Annie told him that she didn't like that. She didn't like the fact that he was trying to hide his identity. Baby says Spade responded with a slap to Annie's face and told her, I'm Spade Cooley, up and coming king of Western swing. I'm a big band leader, and you ain't gonna question me about nothing I do. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna do what I wanna do. And Spade was not lying. From then on out, he definitely was doing what he wanted to do. Gossip claims that he was constantly with other women. It is said that he had 13 abortees for his side chicks in 1 year, and everybody wasn't the age that they should have been. There's one story that says that one night early in Spade's career, he ended up having a show with his band, and as soon as the show was over, he was telling everybody, I gotta go, I gotta get home to my wife Annie, my son John, and so he rushes out of the door and he leaves. Everybody else stays behind, they're talking to each other, and then maybe about 30 minutes to an hour, it was time for everybody to start heading out. Well, one of the people who was heading out was Spade's manager, a lady by the name of Bobby Bennett. And on her way home, after she'd driven several miles, she ended up seeing Spade's car like off of the road, but it was far off the road, almost kind of semi-hidden in some trees. So the first thing that Bobby Bennett and her husband, who was with her, thought was that Spade had maybe had a small accident, or maybe he had car trouble and he had skidded off of the road. So they pulled over to help him. Baby, them folks got up there to that doggone window window and say that they saw Spade Cooley back there with a 13-year-old knocking their country cowboy boots together. That's the only way I can put it. His manager, Bobby Bennett, and her husband were so stunned that they basically just backed away from the car, got in their own car, and pulled off. Some kind of way, though, the story gets back to Spade's wife, Annie. And when Annie gets the gumption to ask Spade about this ordeal, he throws hands just because she knows about it. Told her she was in his business and she needed to stay in a woman's place. Some of Annie's friends urged her to call the police department, but per Annie, when she called the police, nobody did anything. What she didn't know is Spade Cooley basically had the police department in his back pocket. So it was almost like Spade Cooley was untouchable and Annie Cooley had nobody. Her life had become an absolute nightmare, and Annie thought she was going to have to basically live this way until she died, until something happened that changed the course of Annie's life forever. See, I haven't went into detail about Spade's career, but by this time the man was so successful, he had his hand in just about everything, and one of the events he held were auditions for young girls to come and audition for him to see if they could sing alongside him whenever he performed. And this is actually where most of those 13 abortees came from. But anyways, one of those girls who showed up to audition was the very pretty 19-year-old Ella Mae Evans. As soon as Spade saw Ella Mae, he became infatuated with her beauty and he begged her to be his mistress, and Ella Mae would say no. But then Spade started to shower her with gifts. Not only gifts, he ended up getting her a very expensive apartment right there in Hollywood. And when Spade started showing out like this is when Ella Mae basically signed on to be his other woman. Spade was so in love with his new pretty young Ella Mae that as soon as he gave her that apartment, he moved all of his belongings outside of his marital home with Annie and started to live with Ella Mae. And then after Spade and Annie had been separated for about a year, and Spade had also ended up getting his mistress Ella Mae pregnant, and everything seemed okay. That is until Spade's new lady, Ella Mae, ended up going into labor. Bobby Bennett, Spade's manager, told this story. Bobby said that she was at home with Ella Mae, and Ella Mae started having labor pains and contractions 10 minutes apart, and so she ended up calling Spade. And she tells Spade that he needs to come from the studio right now. She thinks that Ella Mae is about to have the baby. So Spade jumps in his car, goes to his house to pick up Bobby and Ella Mae, and they are headed to the hospital. But on their way, they pass by a car that he recognizes as his wife Annie's car. Not only does he recognize Annie's car, he recognizes Annie sitting in the passenger seat beside a fine, young, handsome, unknown actor. And instantly, Spade did a U-turn right in the middle of traffic and started chasing Annie's car down the street. Meanwhile, his girlfriend Ella Mae is having these contractions and labor pains, and she is screaming, "Spade, what are you doing? The hospital is that way. You know, I think the baby is about to come." "Shut up, B. That was my wife with another man. You and that baby can wait." And then he starts talking to himself. Who does Annie think she is? She thinks she could just do me like this? She got some nerve being with another man. Meanwhile, his wife Annie and her boyfriend don't even really know what's going on until they get rammed from the back. When Annie looks in the rear view and she recognizes Spade, she is terrified. Spade continues to ram them, and every time Annie and her boyfriend makes a turn, Spade is right on their behind. Eventually, they have driven out of the city part and are now kind of down a little gravel dirt road. And this is when Annie and her boyfriend pull over. Well, Spade pulls over right behind them, baby, and can't even put the car in park good before he jumps out of the car and starts walking up to Annie's car. As soon as Spade gets up to Annie's car, he yanks open the driver's side door and punches Annie's boyfriend in the face. And usually Spade Cooley whoops ass, honey, but this doggone young actor, they say that actor boy jumped out of that doggone car and drugged Spade's tail. Punched Spade in the face about 4 times and 2 times in the stomach. The manager, Bobby Bennett, who had been in the car with Ella Mae, said that she thought that boy was gonna kill Spade. So she ended up getting out of the car and stopping the fight. And don't ask me if Ella Mae gave birth in that back seat, because I don't know, because that's where the story ended. All I know is that by 1945, Spade and Annie were now completely divorced, and he ended up marrying Ella Mae, who was only 21 years old. Immediately after they were married, Spade forbade Ella Mae from having any friends, any associates. She couldn't go anywhere. She couldn't talk on the phone. Anything she did, she had to sneak and do. He had complete control over her life, and he told her, just the same way that he told Annie, that she didn't need to question him about anything. But there was something that Spade started doing that bothered Ella Mae to her core, and that was the fact that Spade had started cheating again. Now that Ella Mae had been upgraded to wife, her spot was open. So gossip claims that one day early in their marriage, Spade was at home with Ella Mae, and he told her to stay at home, don't go anywhere. He would be gone most of the day, but he would come home later that night. Well, by the time 2 o'clock in the morning rolled around, Spade had not come home. Ella Mae starts pacing the house. She is crying. She's kind of arguing with herself because she knows in her heart of hearts that Spade is out cheating. So finally, Ella Mae just gets some guts about herself, and she's like, you know what? He's not gonna do me like this. I'm about to go and find him and see what he's doing, and he better not be messing around on me. So she gets in the car, and she ends up going to one of Spade's many hideaways. She goes and she creeps up to the door, and she starts to listen. And sure enough, she starts to hear 4 voices giggling and laughing. It's her husband Spade, it's actor Errol Flynn, and it's 2 females in the room with them. Ella Mae knocks on the door and she says, "Yoo-hoo, Spade, it's me. Yeah, your wife, Ella Mae. So you in there with other women. Well, I tell you what, have your fun." And then she walks off. Well, Ella Mae gets in her car and she drives back home. And then from that moment, she vanishes into thin air. For the next 2 days, nobody can find Ella Mae at all. In fact, on the second day that she was missing, Spade shows up at his manager, Bobby Bennett's house in tears, saying that he does not know where his wife is, and he asks Bobby and her husband to please help me find my wife, help me find Ella Mae. And so Bobby invites Spade into her house, and then she sends her husband out into the night to go look for Ella Mae while she sits and tries to calm Spade down and talk to him about what happened. Well, about an hour into Bobby and Spade sitting at the house talking, Bobby's house phone starts to ring, and when she answers the phone, her blood runs cold because her husband is on the other end of the phone, and he said, Bobby, listen to me. I'm calling you from a payphone. Don't tell Spade you're talking to me. Just act like you're on the phone with somebody else." And so Bobby is immediately nervous, and she's like, "Oh, okay, so what's up? What's going on?" And her husband breaks down crying in a flood of tears. "Oh God, Bobby, I found her. I found Ella Mae, and Bobby, her face is falling apart. Her eyes are swollen shut. There's bruises and blood all over the place. And oh God, Bobby, her scalp has been ripped up in the front a bit." And then he says, "And she's telling me, Bobby, that a homeless man did this to her. But I don't believe that. Spade did this to her, Bobby. Spade beat up Ella Mae and then he dumped her." And that's exactly what had happened. That night, after Ella Mae had went to the hideaway and caught Errol Flynn and Spade in there with those 2 girls, when she left to go home, Spade immediately followed her home. And that's when he did that severe damage to her. And then after he did what he did with his fist, allegedly, he made Ella Mae get in the car, drove her out of the county, and dumped her on the side of the road. Story says that he left her there that night for punishment, but the next day when he went back to retrieve her, to his surprise, Ella Mae was not anywhere in that vicinity. She had walked miles away, and she was up under a bridge, which is where Bobby's husband found her. So Bobby is still holding the phone, absolutely stunned, as she listens to her husband cry and tell her, she wants to go back to Spade. She acts like a stranger did this to her. I'm not taking her back to him. I'm gonna take her to the hospital, and we're gonna call the police because I can't believe he done this to her. And when Bobby heard this is when she snapped back into reality, and she told Spade, "Hey Spade, if you don't mind, can you go in the kitchen and fix me a cup of water, please?" And while Spade was in the kitchen, allegedly she told her husband, "Now listen, baby, I know you're all upset, but listen, you cannot take Ella Mae to the hospital. You definitely cannot tell the police. Baby, if Spade is ruined, we are too. He's our biggest paycheck." And she further says, I mean, for goodness sakes, just listen to Ella Mae. She's wanting to go back with Spade, her husband. I mean, she's saying that a homeless man did that to her. So who are we? And so, allegedly, Bobby's husband gets Ella Mae, he puts her in the car, and they drive back to Bobby's house. When Bobby's husband walks through the door with Ella Mae, Spade is thanking goodness, oh my gosh, thank you so much that you found my wife. Ella Mae, what happened to you? What happened? And allegedly, Ella Mae goes to start telling this lie about how the homeless man had jumped on her and, just a bunch of mess. And baby, this is just the start of the mess. If that story bothered you or upset your spirit or got you traumatized or whatever it's got you doing, like I said before, exit now, keep on telling you, doggone it. Because baby, that's nothing on what is coming up next. The details on the next major assault say that Spade was away from home for 2 days and he was in a hotel just having the time of his life with 2 hookers. And by the end of that second night with these girls, I guess Spade started to project what he was doing on his wife Ella Mae, who was not doing anything, just sitting at home obeying him, watching over the children. And so gossip claims that Spade tells the hookers, come on girls, jump in my car. I gotta go see what my wife is doing. And then he drives over to his house. It's probably around 3 a.m. in the morning. He barges right into his house, heads right upstairs to he and Ella Mae's bedroom, and he snatches the covers off of a sleeping Ella Mae, telling her, get up, whore. Who you done had in my bed, you whore? Get up. And Ella Mae immediately is like, Spade, please calm down. I haven't had anybody here. And honey, the children are sleeping. Please just calm down. Said Spade kind of giggled and was like, well, since you ain't had no fun with nobody else, I done decided to bring my fun to you. Girls, come on up. And had them stinking TT heifers that ain't took nobody's shower for the last 2 days they've been doing stuff with him, along with his stinking TT, trying to jump in bed with Ella Mae. Baby, Ella Mae was horrified. Gossip claims that she got up out of the bed and ran away and ran downstairs to their children's room where she tried to hide in the closet. Said the Spade bust into the door in the children's room, woke the children up, and basically yanked Ella Mae out of the closet and took her back upstairs. And when he got her up there, he and the hookers held her down and she was tied to the bed. She later confided in Bobby Bennett that Spade made her do some of the most grotesque, unspeakable things with these strangers that she'd ever, done in her life. Things that she didn't even know that people did. This caused Ella Mae to have an alcohol problem. And that right there is horrible stuff. But in between these major assaults, there were still a bunch of mini assaults. Another thing that Ella Mae had to deal with was her husband giving her the clap, as they called it back at that time, 6 times in 1 year. In fact, it's so many details about what this man did to his wife, but I just cannot cover them all. So I'm just here to tell you about the major assaults that I saw. And the next major assault came just because of Spade's insecurity, because of the fact that he was absolutely insanely jealous of Roy Rogers. Yes, the same Roy Rogers from the beginning that he was hugging and laughing with. Spade had an underlying jealousy of Roy Rogers. Well, gossip claims that in the late 1940s, early 1950s, Roy Rogers was actually one of Spade's neighbors. He probably lived about 3-4 houses down from Spade. And one day, while Spade was going to the studio, California started to have these wildfires, and the wildfires were coming dangerously close to Spade's home, Roy's home, and everybody else on the street. So the story says that Roy Rogers went outside and started using a personal tractor that he owned and started digging a big mega ditch in the back of his yard so they could fill it with water. So I guess to stop the fires from coming over, I suppose. Well, not only did he dig the ditch in his backyard, he took it up on himself to dig the ditch for everybody else's backyards, including Spade Cooley's backyard. Well, I don't know if I mentioned this already, but on this particular day, Spade Cooley was at work and Ella Mae was at home. So Spade ended up calling Ella Mae to check on, I guess, her and the children and their property. And Ella Mae says something like, oh, Spade, it's wonderful. Roy Rogers, he's come out here and he's dug a ditch for himself, but he took it up on himself to dig a ditch for all of us. And it's just so great. I'm just so thankful. He's a wonderful man. After she says this, there is pure dead silence on the phone. And then suddenly Spade blurts out, So you sleeping with Roy Rogers? Ella May is beside herself, trying to explain that no, she is not sleeping with Roy Rogers. She's even sorry that she gave him his props. Spade, please drop it. Spade ain't drop a MFing thing, baby. As a matter of fact, within 10 minutes, he had left the studio and was now speeding towards his house, ready to confront Ella May. When he got home, he did what he always did to Ella May. But this time, he was so upset that even after he did what he did, he made Ella May get in the car with him, and he starts to take off down the highway, just flying, baby. The whole time still busting Ella May upside the head. This man gets so angry that he slams on the brakes out of nowhere and sends Ella May right to the windshield. She does not go through the windshield, thank goodness, but the windshield cracks and there are cuts everywhere. But Ella May's ordeal was not over. Spade started to speed down the highway again, and this time he leans over, opens Ella May's door, and then pushes her outside on the highway. Just by sheer luck, Ella May not only survives, but she doesn't have any major internal injury. What she does have is a lot of outside damage. Spade gets out of the car, puts her back in the car, and then they head to his manager, Bobby Bennett's house. As soon as they get through the door, Spade tells Bobby, hey, take Ella May in the back and clean her up. And actually, this right here had become routine. There were several times before that Spade would do what he did and then would take Ella May to Bobby's house and have Bobby take her to the back and clean her up. And then after Ella May was cleaned all up, Spade would put her back in the car and take her home. Well, as you can imagine, after constantly going through this terrible and negative treatment, Ella May's mental starts to crash. She doesn't understand why, when she is being treated this way, that she does not want to leave Spade, that she still loves Spade. She develops severe depression, and she also starts to try to take herself off of the planet. There were plenty of times where she did some cutting and they put her in a mental facility to stay for a while until she got well. But every time she came back home, she ended up getting mentally sick again because her husband Spade was the one that needed to change. So since things in their marriage were becoming worse and worse, by the 1950s, people started to suspect that something was going on in the Cooley marriage, that something just wasn't quite right. By this time, a few of their neighbors had heard Spade hollering and shouting at Ella May. Also, people in Hollywood started to hear rumors of Ella May's stays in these mental facilities. And what really set tongues wagging was either in the year 1954 or 1957 when Ella May appeared with Spade on his TV show for a Christmas special, and she had on a fur coat, but she messed around and let the sleeves slip down on her fur coat, and people saw bloody bandages on her arms, leaving them to speculate that Ella May was trying to take herself off the planet, which, like I told you, she was. So with rumors and gossip spreading all over the place about what was going on with their marriage, and then all of these neighbors now whispering about what was going on in the Cooley household, Spade decided that it was high time to move away from the neighborhood that they were living in. It was time for something else. And so he came to Ella May and he told her, baby, I know that I have been doing you any kind of way, but Ella May, I am sorry, baby. I'm sorry. So I want to show you how sorry I am by building you a mansion in the desert, away from everything, something with a beautiful view and beautiful scenery. And on top of that, I'm going to build a public water park, a water park that our family will own. I'm going to do all of that for us, baby, for you. And rumor has it that it was the first time that anybody had seen Ella May with a genuine smile in months. But Ella May just didn't know when she agreed to that home, she had signed her death warrant. So the year is now 1960. Spade Cooley has built his desert mansion. The whole family has moved in, and now he's just trying to build up the water park. And although he had other male celebrities like Humphrey Bogart, I think Gene Autry, and a few others, although he had them chipping in and basically being partners with him, helping him finance the water park, he needed much more money than they were willing to give. Well, Ella May was eager to do something right in her husband's eyes. You know, she was eager to help her husband in some way. And this would lead to the most ferocious situation that she had ever encountered thus far, because she called people from her small list of contacts that she had been able to build over the years, trying to see if any of them would donate or become partners. And rumor has it that some of the people that she called were this pretty well-off gay couple. And they told Ella, sure, we'll help. And so they started to give their money. Well, once Spade had filled his list of givers and he had the projected amount that he was going to need to build and open his water park, he ended up throwing a party for all of the partners, the donators, everybody who was helping. And the two gay guys that Ella May has gotten to help, they show up to the party. Well, mind you, Spade had no idea that these two guys were gay. He didn't even know that it was Ella May, his wife, who had gotten these two gay guys to help out with the project in the first place. And when those guys showed up to his party and they immediately started going over and clamoring up to Ella May and talking to her, they end up holding hands or something like that. Well, Spade ends up glancing over at them while they're holding hands and is immediately disgusted by what he sees. So this man stands up in the middle of the party and he yells out, "Security, get these two disgusting fags out of my house. I want them out now." But what Spade didn't realize, half of the whole Hollywood was gay. They were just in the closet undercover. And that meant a lot of those businessmen that he had been able to successfully persuade to work with him, donate with him, and partner with him, half of those men were also undercover gay. And when they saw the way Spade Cooley humiliated those two out and openly gay men and the way he dismissed them like that, they were absolutely mortified and they were very, very angry. Even though they were standing in this party acting straight and in the closet, a lot of them ended up leaving the party. And not only did they leave the party, they took their funds and donations back with them. Allegedly, even some of the people who were issuing the building permits for the water park were even undercover gay. And so they were holding up his permits. He lost funding. Pretty much the water park came to a halt. Well, of course, with Spade's big plans on hold, possibly going down the drain, he blamed Ella May. After Ella May got her usual bip bop blippity blop, Spade still wasn't satisfied because he felt like those two gay guys, it was their fault too. So baby, how about this? Spade found out where these two guys lived, came to their house and broke in and beat both of them up to a pulp, and then told them that this whole thing was their fault, and if they even thought about taking their funding away and not helping with his water park anymore, he would kill them. And surprisingly, Spade did continue to receive checks from these two men, and they continued to fund his business venture. Or so Spade thought. Story says Spade came home early from the studio one day, and he ended up walking in on Ella May, who was busy writing a check. And when Spade snatched the check out of Ella May's hands, he saw that it was made out to one or both of the gay guys that had been supposedly continuously funding him. Spade, of course, flew into a rage, accusing Ella May of sleeping around with these men, telling her that she had a mental problem, that something is wrong with her. He told her she was involved with very disturbing group sex. And immediately he starts in on Ella May. And the whole time he's also kind of spitting on her and telling her, you're disgusting. You're messing around with these guys. I can't believe you. And Ella May is trying to tell him, no, that's not what it is. Yes, it is. Why are you giving these guys money? And so Ella May, who's trying to protect herself, had to come clean with what was really going on. And what was really going on is that after Spade had showed up to those two men's house and beat them up, they got in contact with Ella May and they told her that they were not giving Spade another dime. Well, Ella May was so terrified that Spade would actually go and kill these men that she made a deal with these men and told them that she would write a check from a personal bank account that she had set up in secret, where she had been kind of stashing money for herself. She would start writing them a personal check. They would take her check and then cash it and then write their own check. And although Ella May thought that telling this truth was going to help her out, it did not help her at all. As a matter of fact, I can't even describe to you what happened next to Ella May. All that I can tell you is that Spade once again brought Ella May to Bobby Bennett's house for Bobby Bennett to clean Ella May up. And this time when Bobby saw Ella May's injuries, she was floored. There were actual legit holes in this woman's body. Her face was said to be unrecognizable. She was also bleeding from in between. When Bobby saw Ella May this time, this was just too much. She could no longer face this on her own, and so she ended up calling a personal nurse over that she and Spade knew personally and that they both trusted. And so the nurse comes over and she examines Ella May's injuries, and she sees that Ella May is actually bleeding from her uterus. Well, then the nurse goes in to actually feel around, and baby, don't you know, when she pulled her hand back out, there was a balled up check. Same check that Ella May had been writing when Spade walked into that room in the midst of him doing everything that he did to her. Yes, he put that check where it was found by the nurse. After this episode, it truly seems like everybody who was in the know just felt like it was only a matter of time for Ella May, including Ella May herself. Rumor has it that when Ella May and Spade got back home a few days later, she tried to take herself off of the planet again, but this time it was actually a ruse so she could go and be admitted in the mental facility. And when she got there, Ella May was said to have made several calls to people that she felt like might help her, and she told those people that, you know, Spade is going to kill me. You know, I promise you he's going to kill me. You got to help me. Well, what Ella May didn't know is that Spade had paid some people at the mental health hospital to tap her phone line. And so by the time she finished the last phone call begging for help, Spade had already known what she had been up to, and he was already on his way back up to the mental hospital to retrieve his wife. The folks say that when Spade got up to the hospital, before he came back to the room, Ella May started begging and telling the doctors that, you know, please don't let him take me. He's going to kill me. Please, please. But nobody did anything. Allegedly, nobody did anything. They sat up there and watched this woman basically get wheeled out of the hospital by Spade and get put in his car. And by the time she was being wheeled outside, they say that she just basically had a look of resignation come across her face. Later on that night, which was April 3rd, 1961, around maybe 12 a.m., 1 a.m., Spade ended up calling his manager, Bobby Bennett, on the phone. And he told her that he needed her to come over right now because he had to talk to her. When Bobby Bennett pulled up, Spade walked out of the house with a shotgun slung over his shoulder, and Bobby says he was covered from head to toe with blood and mucus. Not only was he covered with blood and mucus, the shotgun was covered with blood and mucus. Bobby was so fearful of what she saw, she said that she thought about getting back into her car and just straight leaving. But, you know, she was terrified that Spade might shoot her. So she goes into the house, and Spade tells her to sit down at the kitchen table, and they start talking. He starts telling her how, you know, me and Ella May, we got to get ourselves together. You know, this is just going too far. And the whole time he is talking, Bobby is looking around the home that she says is covered in blood spatter. And so while Spade is still talking, Bobby says, Spade, where is Ella May? Oh, you know, she's laid off in the bed. You know, she just got out of the shower. She was tired, so she was resting in the bed. And then he continues talking like nothing is wrong. Bobby stops him, and she's kind of stern, and she's like, Spade, I'm sorry, but I'm going to go check on Ella May. So she gets up, and she walks into the bedroom, and she does see Ella May laid in the bed, wrapped in several covers. And the first thing that she notices is that once again, Ella May's face is disfigured, swollen, everything else. But when Bobby walked over and she pulled the covers back, the sight was horrific. Rumor has it that Bobby Bennett later said that she had to keep herself from vomiting. At the trial, Spade and Ella May Cooley's daughter described what Bobby Bennett had seen under those covers when she lifted it up. Per Melody Cooley, as soon as her parents came home, her mother, Ella Mae, ended up taking a shower. And not maybe even 10-15 minutes later, she heard her father, Spade, stomping down the hallway to her mother's bathroom and telling Ella Mae, "Get out the shower right now." And so Melody comes in to see what is going on. And right when she arrives in the bathroom, she sees that her father has grabbed a handful of her mother's hair and has yanked Ella Mae out of the shower onto the floor. As soon as Ella Mae hits the floor, Spade just starts stomping on her stomach. Melody said after Spade was done, she heard her mother making gurgling noises. And while Ella Mae was gurgling and struggling, Spade was telling her, "Get up and go in the bedroom, get up and go in the bedroom right now." But Ella Mae would not move. So Spade starts to take Ella Mae's head and slam it back and forth onto the ground. Once he's done, Ella Mae is no longer doing anything. And Spade is still telling her, "Get up, you ain't dead." Melody, his daughter, is terrified. And so she tries to run out of the house or run to the front. And Spade tells her that, "No, you gonna get back here and watch all of this. If you try to run away, then I'm going to kill you." And so Melody sat and watched as her father taunted her mother, telling her mother to get up, even though it was clear that her mother was pretty much gone. Since Spade didn't believe that Ella Mae was gone, he lit up a cigarette and he starts to smoke, and then he says, "We gonna see. You want to sit up there and play dead? Well, we gonna see if this wake you up." And then he takes the cigarette and he reaches down and he burns the nip. Not only does he burn the nippies, he rips one of them halfway off. When that doesn't rouse Ella Mae, Spade then goes to grab his shotgun. And then he inserts the shotgun in the front and the back. It was an absolute nightmare what Spade Cooley did to his wife, Ella Mae Cooley. Melody said that after her father finally had enough doing what he was doing to Ella Mae, he picked Ella Mae up and he laid her in the bed, and then he covered her up with cover and was just like, she just needs time to rest. She just needs to sleep. And then he tells Melody, "Come up to the front with me." When he and Melody get to the front, he makes Melody sit down on his lap and then starts to do. And when Melody tries to fight and break away, telling her father to stop, this is when Spade finally just lets her run off, and Melody runs out of the house and leaves running down the road going to a neighbor's house. And after Melody had took off, this is when Spade ended up picking up the phone to call Bobby Bennett, telling her that she needed to come over so they could talk. On August the 21st, 1961, Spade Cooley was convicted of first-degree murder. He was supposed to be serving a life sentence, but on August the 6th, 1968, after not even serving 8 years in prison, parole was approved for Spade to have at a later date, which was to take place in 1970. However, Spade never even made it to that date. On November the 2nd, 1969, he was actually out on furlough playing an officer's ball as the entertainment, and during the intermission of that officer's ball or benefit program, I'm not sure which, but anyways, during the intermission, he ended up having a heart attack and passing away. Spade was 58 years old at his time of death, and as for his wife, Ella Mae was 37 years old when Spade murdered her. And usually I can tell the most scandalous stories and have redeeming qualities for the person at the end, but unfortunately for Spade Cooley, ain't no redeeming, or probably for him, not even a redeemer. But anyways, I love y'all so much. This is the end of the old Hollywood scandalous tale of Mr. Spade Cooley. Please go ahead and like and subscribe, and I will see you guys on the next video. Bye.